Got to read between the lines. Got to read between the lines.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host Tom D'Ambra. My friends, this week we're going to touch on some news you might have missed because the mainstream media is not presenting it to you. And then we're going to get into something that we started talking about a month ago, and this is called the Chinese economic zones. And it all comes down to what this program has been screaming about for years now, and that is the Federal Reserve and the fraudulent debt. And I hope I have the time to touch a little bit on what Iceland has done since their government arrested some of the top bankers in the country for fraud, is prosecuting them, has declared all financial institution mortgages null and void, and by a referendum to the people voted 92% no, we're not going to pay the fraud. So I hope I have time to get into that, but let's get into some news you may have missed. Okay, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, we brought up Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat out of New Jersey, about the sex parties which Salman Melgen that they had down in Dominican Republic. And I am not going to read this to you verbatim because it gets into rather disgustingly how Senator Bob Menendez enjoys very young girls and describes them and all so forth. But I'm going to read just one caption of this because the mainstream media has ignored this. The main source in the Bob Menendez underage hooker scandal sent the FBI the names of 4 hookers who confirmed they had attended sex parties with Salman Melgen and Senator Bob Menendez in the Dominican Republic. On Tuesday, the FBI agents raided the West Palm Beach business of Dr. Melgen, who was suspected of providing free trips and even underage Dominican Republic prostitutes to U.S. Senator Bob Menendez. After that, my friends, it gets into names, dates, addresses, what these girls look like and their ages, and I will just tell you, it's disgusting. They are all underage. But then again, you know, we have people in the Senate and in the Congress, you know, who were captured back in the 80s with regards to having male prostitute brothel run out of his office. And what happened to him? But they made him the chairman banking committee senior member. So I'm sure this guy will get promoted somewhere along the line. But again, I just wanted to give you an update on that. This is Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat out of New Jersey. Now, friends, you have to ask yourself, why is this Dr. Melgen giving free trips and arranging underage prostitutes to the senator? What's the gain? You have to ask yourself. Rather interesting. But again, I am not going to go on about the disgustingness and the depravity of some of the people that we supposedly looking out for our benefit. Okay, another headline. This is from the Financial Times. Billionaires dumping stocks. Economists know why. Despite the 6.5 stock market rally over the last three months, handfuls of billionaires are quietly dumping their American stocks and fast. Warren Buffett, who has been a cheerleader for the U.S. stocks for some time now, is dumping his shares at an alarming rate. He recently complained of disappointing performance in American companies. Then we get with 70% of the U.S. economy dependent on consumer spending, Buffett apparently lacks of faith in companies and future prospects is worrisome. Fellow billionaire John Paulson, does that name ring a bell to anybody? Well, it should, who made a fortune betting on subprime mortgages. Meltdown is clearing out of U.S. stocks too. During the second quarter of the year, Paulson's hedge fund, Paulson & Company, dumped over 14 million shares of J.P. Morgan Chase. The fund also dumped its entire position in its discount retailer Family Dollar and consumer maker Sara Lee. Consumer goods maker Sara Lee. Billionaire George Soros recently sold nearly all of his banking stocks, including shares of J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Goldman Sachs. Between the 3 banks, Soros sold more than over 1 million shares. So why are these billionaires dumping their shares of U.S. companies? After all, the stock market is still in the midst of its historic rally. Real estate prices have finally leveled off, Not true. And for the first time in 5 years are actually rising in many locations. Again, not true. If you look at the national average, my friends, they're still coming down. As a matter of fact, you know, some local houses here in upstate New York at auctions have gone for $8,000, I know personally, $12,000, I know personally. These are houses that 4 or 5 years ago were selling for $180,000 and $200,000. It's very likely these professional investors are aware of specific research that points towards a massive market correction as much as 90%. Now, when they say market correction, you better look out. It's like the magic word reform. When the government says reform, you better look out. When it says, when the industrialists say market correction, you better look out. They're looking for a 90% adjustment. My friends, which way do you think the adjustment's going to be, up or down? Obviously down. That's why the people in the know are dumping hundreds of millions of shares in the stock market. And you know what they're getting into? They're buying gold, silver, and palladium. Okay, let's do some more. We all know that the IRS got involved in the medical system through the Obamacare. If you remember right, that the IRS, they were going to hire 16,000 new IRS agents to make sure that you are going to be involved with Obamacare. Well, the Office of GAOA, General Accounting Office, they came up with their own estimate of what's going to cost the American family. Now this is, I'm going to just read the headline to you. IRS, cheapest Obamacare plan will be $20,000 per family. How's that sound? You think your medical premiums are high now? And not only is it going to cost you a minimum of $20,000 a year, if that's what the estimate is, imagine what the real number is going to be. And you're losing control of the relationship between you and your doctor. Your doctor is not going to have the ability to make his own personal recommendations for your health. Your doctor is going to have to look up at a guidebook put up by the IRS or the United States government, the insolvent corporation that you think is a benevolent organization, and say, okay, Mr. So-and-so, he has COPD, he has CHF, and now he needs hip surgery. Well, you know what? And then it's going to be a score system. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. So-and-so, you didn't score enough points to be able to facilitate this hip surgery because of your previous history. Sorry about that. We talk about death panels. Now they denied death panels. Now they're talking about death panels like you and I talk about a football game. Okay, and a final regulation issued Wednesday. The Internal Revenue Service, again, which is now in the medical field, assumes that under the assumption that under the Obamacare, the cheapest health plan available for a family will cost $20,000 for the year. Under Obamacare, Americans will be required to buy health insurance or pay a penalty to the IRS. The IRS assumption that the cheapest plan for a family will cost $20,000 per year is found in an example that the IRS gives to people to understand how to calculate the penalty they will need to pay the government if they do not buy a mandated health plan. Think of that. By the barrel of the threat of duress, if you can't shop around, you have to buy from us. You can't go across the street and look at that other used salesman's car lot. You have to buy from us. And here's what you have to buy. And here's the warranty you have to accept. Oh, and if you do go across the street, you're going to be penalized. You're going to pay us anyway. And I'm sure you'll be red flagged. The national average bronze plan for a family of 5, 2 adults and 3 children, is $20,000, the regulatory says. Bronze will be the lowest tier health insurance plan available under Obamacare after silver, gold, and platinum. Gee, the 3 things that all the billionaires are getting into currently. Under the law. Oh, and by the way, my friends, when you read this bill, guess what? Guess who is exempt from this bill? You got it. All your elected officials. Don't believe me? Look it up yourself. All your elected officials, just like they're exempt from Social Security, who have their private retirement plan, are exempt from Obamacare because they have their own medical plan. that you pay for. And do you think they're going to spend $20,000 a year and be regulated on and have a point scale to what they can get done? Absolutely not. Okay, so actually the bronze plan is actually, if you look at it, is $20,085. Okay, unbelievable. And the new final rules published Wednesday, the IRS set in law the rules for implementing the penalty Americans must pay if they fail to obey Obamacare's mandate to buy insurance. To help illustrate these rules, see all for your own benefit, the IRS presented examples of different situations that families may find themselves in. In the examples, the IRS assumes that families of 5 who are uninsured would need to pay an average bronze plan in 2016. Okay, my friends, I am not going to go on with the numbers here. I think you get the gist of this. The cheapest it's going to cost you by estimates is $20,000 a year, and you are not going to have say about any kind of relationship with your doctor, what you want to do with your own body. Okay, here's another one I found very interesting. This was not in the mainstream media. This was basically from January 28th. Kyle Bass, and if you don't know who Kyle Bass is, he is a senior member of the Obama administration. He's part of the the fiscal cliff crisis team. Okay, he's one of the bigwigs here. And it says right here, Kyle Bass, who knows a thing or two about economics and finance, recently spoke to a senior member of the Obama administration about their planned solution for fixing the U.S. economy and the trade deficit. When I asked, this is when I asked a senior member of the Obama administration last week, how are we going to grow exports if we won't allow nominal wage deflation? His answer is, you ready for this, my friends? We're just going to kill the dollar. This is a senior member of the Obama administration, Kyle Bass, and he's part of the fiscal crisis. And how are they going to fix everything? Of course, this was planned back in 1912. And we've read this to you verbatim from the creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffith. He says, we're just going to kill the dollar. So that's the only answer. Imagine that. Kyle Bass, senior administration, Obama administration. We're just going to kill the dollar. That's the only answer. I bet you that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. Okay, now here's something that was actually reported by the mainstream media, the Washington Post. This was written January 29th, 2013. As we all know, that Senator Chuck Hagel is now going to be confirmed as Secretary of Defense. And according to a report, Mr. Hagel, and I'll read this verbatim, Hagel warned Obama that he should look out for rogue elements within the Pentagon and the United States government that were leading us to a new world order. According to the account Hagel gave, it is reported for the first time that he told Obama, we are at a time where there is a new world order. We don't control it. You must question everything, every assumption, everything they, the military and diplomats, tell you. Any assumption 10 years old is out of date. You need to question our role. You need to question the military. You need to question what we are using the military for. I could not say it better. I could not say it better. Let me read that again. We are at a time where there is a new world order. Chuck Hagel, who's going to be nominated for Secretary of Defense. Actually, he'll get it. Think of that. You don't have to pay attention to what we're telling you. Okay. This was written from a veterans site, And basically, I'm going to read this rather quickly. And this is a letter from a former veteran and former retired Texas Highway Patrol person. And the subject says, be forewarned, very important. Now, I have spoken to other veterans that have been to the VA, Veterans Administration, hospital, and so forth, and gone through this questionnaire. So a lot of you veterans out there are already aware of this. But this is going to tie into our next subject matter. Be forewarned, very important. This is a retired police officer with Texas Highway Patrol. If you know veterans, please pass this on to them. Be very cautious about what you say and to whom. I am passing this along. There are comments from 2 other people. I have also been asked if we keep our guns in the house. Okay, he is speaking to a nurse here. The nurse just kind of slipped it in along with all the other regular questions. I told her I refused to answer because it was against the law to ask. Everyone, whether you have guns or not, should give a neutral answer so they have no idea who does and who doesn't. My doctor asked me if I had guns in my house and also if any were loaded. I, of course, answered yes to both questions. Then he asked why I kept a loaded gun close to my bed. I answered that my son, who is a certified gun instructor and also works for Homeland Security, advised me that an unloaded, locked-up gun is no protection against a criminal attack. Duh. The government now requires these questions to be asked of people on Medicare and probably everyone else soon. Just passing this along for your information. I had to visit a doctor other than my regular doctor when my doctor was on vacation. One of the questions on the form I had to fill out was, do you have any guns in your house? My answer was none of your damn business. So it was out there. Is this either an insurance issue or a government intervention? Either way, it is out there, and the second the government gets into your medical records, think of Obamacare, who's going to be controlling your medical records, the IRS. It will become a major issue and will ultimately result in lock and load. Please pass this on to all other retired guys. Thanks from a Vietnam vet and retired police officer. I had a doctor's appointment at the local VA clinic yesterday and found out something very interesting that I would like to pass along. While going through triage before seeing the doctor, this is another person who said he was going to pass this along. I was asked at the end of the exam 3 questions. Do I feel stressed? Do I feel threatened? Do I feel like doing harm to someone? The nurse then informed me that if I had answered yes to any of these questions, I would have lost my concealed carry permit, as it would have gone into my medical records and the VA would have reported it to Homeland Security. My friends, unbelievable. But then again, we've done this on this show numerous times. Who is the number one threat to the government? Headline. This was posted November 3rd, 2012 from the Forum Post. Department of Homeland Security labels U.S. war veterans as top terrorist. Janet Napolitano, big sis, agrees, I'm adding the big sis, agrees with her staff members that returning U.S. war veterans are the greatest threat to Homeland Security. Reasons being because they are trained in weapons handling and maintenance, urban and rural warfare training, and IED capabilities. Their excuse is that post-traumatic stress disorders will have a direct influence on higher homeland acts of violence. Isn't that something? So, my friends, you can go to war for the corporations. You can bleed for the corporations. You can carry the baggage of killing for the corporations. And then when you come home, are you welcomed with open arms and any medical help you need and any counseling you need? And is there a job waiting for you? No. You're a threat to the very same entity that sent you there. And while you were there, you still had to pay the man in taxes. Think of that. War on terror's new targets. Big Sis, methods designed to catch al-Qaeda terrorists as tools to silence dissidents against big government. Headline, War on Terror's New Targets. Veterans, Tea Partiers, and anti-Fed activists. My friends, we have been declared the enemy since March 9th, 1933, in their own writing. We've read it to you verbatim. The NDAA proclaimed the new battlefield, America, the United States. According to John Moore and others, there are over 150,000 foreign troops in this country right now under a foreign command known as the United Nations. A large portion of our military force is overseas in 148 different nations. You have Homeland Security currently declaring that the most honorable people of our society, the veterans, are the prime target of terrorism. You have Tea Partiers and anti-Fed activists being declared the #1 prime target of the United States government. You better wake up. And you know who else is on this list, my friends? Homeschoolers. People who have more than 7 days worth of food in your house. We were discussing, my friends, the understanding in their own writing that we have been declared the enemy. Again, March 9th, 1933, Trading with the Enemies Act. We have been declared the enemy. The NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, declared the United States the battleground. Okay? Now, we can qualify that there are at least 150,000 foreign troops under a foreign command in this country. We have unqualified reports of as much as up to 300,000, but we can't qualify that. And what this program is about is everything we have said to you and reported to you, we can qualify it, okay? But I want you to think about this. What about the hundreds of thousands of what you've become to know as private contractors, in real words they're called mercenaries, that are operating, funded, and under the auspices of the insolvent corporation which answers to the bankers, the United States government? Think about this. Why are they bringing in hundreds of thousands of foreign troops into this country while a large majority of our military forces and reservists are scattered throughout 148 different nations throughout the world? You know, it's just like this, you know, the targets, veterans, Tea Partiers, anti-Fed people. And we were talking about, you know, if you're a homeschooler, you are on the terrorist list. If you have more than 7 days worth of food in your house, because the United States government only recommends 3, you have 7 days of food in your house for your family, you're on the terrorist list. And please, I go to YouTube and punch in Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul, talking about this on the Senate floor. He reads it verbatim, and his comments are awesome. So, you know, this reminds me, you know, people who had Ron Paul stickers on their cars. It was actually, you can read this verbatim, are terrorists. Now, we all know that Al-Qaeda was founded and funded currently and transported throughout every hot area in the world by the United States government. Of course, now they're in Mali, stirring up Mali. Why? Why are we in Mali now, my friends? As we predicted, we don't make many predictions on this show. Actually, we don't predict anything. We just read it verbatim from their own plans. But you want to know why we're in Mali? Because Mali is the #3 producer in the world of gold. Gold, my friends. We just talked about billionaires leaving the stock market quickly. Sort of reminds me of what went on in 1929 and what I've read about. how all the insiders, they got out real quick right before the whole thing crashed. And they're talking about a market correction of 90%. Folks, once wealth is developed, it is not lost. It is merely transferred. You are about to see one of the biggest transfers of wealth in the history of the world. And this has already taken place because the real wealth of the world, the land, the gold, the silver, your sweat equity, already goes to the bankers. As we've read to you verbatim through the Grace Committee and others, that your income tax money goes to a private corporation known as the Internal Revenue Service, which your money goes to the IMF. Remember, we read the Grace Committee verbatim to you. It does not go to the operations of the United States government. And now, these very same bankers who have bled you through their cronies of the U.S. government, the federal government, are declaring you terrorist if you're a veteran, if you're a Tea Partier, if you're anti-federalist activities. Is reading their stuff verbatim to you considered anti-federalist? Of course it is. You know why? Because information is a threat to them. Education is our best ammo, my friends. Nobody who is aware of what is going on is saying, let's get the guns out. They're saying, let's keep them close to our chest, because history proves we may need them before this is over. But nobody is saying, let's get the guns out. Education is our best ammo. And now, you know, it reminds me of the Executive Order 6012, where Roosevelt said, oh, these terrible hoarders, these terrible hoarders. We have to do something about these hoarders how dare they collect gold and silver for their families. These terrible hoarders. Read the language. It's really, the propaganda was incredible. Now all I can think of, these terrible preppers, these terrible preppers. These terrible preppers, look what they've done. They're storing more than 3 days worth of food. They're collecting guns and ammo and first aid, and they have faith. And they don't look to us for their needs. These terrible preppers. We must stop them. They are the threat. 2 new recently released videos released by Department of Homeland Security added to the mountain of evidence that proves that Big Six has now dispensed with all the pretense of war on terror being focused on al-Qaeda Muslims, as tools that were designed to catch foreign terrorists are now being targeted against Americans who oppose big government. 2 recent PSAs, and again, public service announcements, Homeland Security, one of them is titled, See Something, Say Something. Okay? And you can go on the internet and watch this. Just punch in Homeland Security, see something, say something, and it'll come out for you. And if you want to see it in the public realm, you can walk into any Walmart, and they're playing it in different Walmarts now throughout the country. Okay, this is a document for official use only. Oh my. Okay. Homegrown violent extremist is any person of citizenship who is operated primarily in the United States and who advocates or is engaged in preparing to engage ideologically the United States government. I'm reading this verbatim to you. Militia extremist. Oh my God, look what's number 3. Sovereign citizen extremist. Imagine that. If you are a sovereign, which is what this country was based on, my friends, you are considered a terrorist. Okay, I got into some state stuff here when I did some research. Texas Department of Public Safety Criminal Law Enforcement pamphlet gives the public characteristics to identify terrorists. Are you ready for this? Now, I read this verbatim, okay? I have to laugh at this because it's so ridiculous. All right, Texas Department of Public Safety Criminal Law Enforcement pamphlet gives the public characteristics to identify terrorists, and they include, are you ready? Buying baby formula, beer, wearing Levi jeans, carrying identifying documents like a driver's license, and or traveling with women or children. That just about sums up every single citizen in Texas. Because if you don't have identifying documents, they're going to arrest you. Okay, May 2008. I can't. We don't have the time to read all this. North Carolina has their own language, and it just goes on to all these other states. My friends, I really don't have time to get into all of this. Nevada, Alabama, they all get into. Oh, and here's Nevada, guys, right here. Anyone with Ron Paul stickers on their car. So if you're in Nevada and you have a Ron Paul sticker on your car, you're a terrorist. Wasn't he a long-term sitting congressman? Okay, and Jim, I hope you can get this. I tried to blow it up, and I hope you can get this. But if you want to look at the very top, this is the Homeland Security Terror Threat List. And I hope you can read the very top here. Can you see what it says? It says veterans. Okay? This is a copy of the Homeland Security Terror Threat List. And who's at the very top, my friends? Veterans. Okay. Some other ones. Extremists. People who complain about the bad economy. Illegal immigrants and emerging nations. Now, emerging nations, you may be thinking, gee, what's an emerging nation? Folks, there are people in this country who wish to separate themselves, both geographically and politically, from this monstrosity we know as the federal government. Now, illegal immigrants, don't worry about that, my friends, because they're about to do immigration reform. So what's going to happen with that is they're just going to make them all legal. Okay, Attorney General Eric Holder, headline. Okay, this is from February 5th. All right, this is February 5th, this is yesterday. It is legal to drone strike Americans. NBC News has produced a chilling, confidential Department of Justice white paper. Now, my friends, if NBC News is putting this is out for a reason. All right? Don't get any illusions that these people are actually breaking news to you. Outlining the legality of extrajudicial drone strikes on U.S. citizens suspected of terrorism, even without intelligence to show involvement in a plot to attack America. I am reading that verbatim from the white paper. While admitting that U.S. citizens are still afforded constitutional protections such as due process, the 16-page report claims that the due process clause would not prohibit a lethal operation of the sort contemplated here. Okay? So what are they saying to you, basically? They're saying, yeah, you got this right, but we're going to ignore it, and we're going to drone strike you. Isn't that something? Do you understand what I'm saying to you? They are saying to you that they're justified, and when you get, how is their justification? Regardless, hold on, let me back up a little bit. The memo claims that this conclusion is reached with recognition of the extraordinary seriousness of a lethal operation by the United States within the United States against a U.S. citizen. Regardless of its extraordinary nature, such lethal drone operations would be justified as an act of national defense. Now, who's the #1 terrorist on their terrorist watch list? We are. Veterans, sovereign movement people, homeschoolers. Well, you saw what Texas said, buying baby formula, wearing Levi's, walking with a woman and child. Folks, we've all been declared the enemy. For the 4th time on this program, look up Trading with the Enemies Act, March 9th, 1933. Look up the definition of enemy. It will state all persons living in the United States and under the jurisdiction thereof. According to the DOJ, a lethal strike against an American citizen is okay. And if an informed high-level official of the U.S. government has determined that the targeted individual poses an imminent threat of violent attack against the United States. like the women and children at Waco, like the Randy Weaver's wife holding a 4-month-old child. Capture is infeasible, and the United States continues to monitor whether the capture becomes feasible or not. So in other words, well, we just don't have the resources to go kick your door down, so we're going to drone strike you. A little easier that way. And the operation would be conducted in a manner consistent with the applicable law of war principles. Let me read that again to you, my friends. The operation would be conducted in a manner consistent with applicable law of war principles. Who's been declared the enemy? We have. Where is the new battleground from the NDAA? Here in America. I am not going to go on about this. Now, one thing I made a note to myself about, and this was actually reported in the New York Times, and I wish I had wrote the date down, my apologies, about Obama's secret kill list. And I remember we talked about it. I remember it being last spring. Okay? Now, we get into preliminarily, the 2013 National Defense Authorization Act, which, and I'm going to read verbatim to you, allows for the indefinite detainment of U.S. citizens suspected of terrorism without a guaranteed trial. At least pretends to consider the authorization for use of military force inability to deny an American their constitutional rights. Do you know what they're saying to you? Again, like they said in 2012. Now, that has not been approved yet that I know of. That is just the language in the NDAA 13. So what they're saying to you is, it's like George W. Bush said, my friends, the Constitution is just a GD piece of paper. Okay, now we have White House Press Secretary Carney saying on Tuesday that the administration's use of drones, and I'm reading this verbatim from his statement, is legal, ethical, and wise. These strikes are legal, they are ethical, and they are wise, according to Carney. Should make you think. You know, you have to ask yourself, what is the risk of those in the front of the camera and those behind the camera just reading their own language? There's a risk here, my friends. Understand it. There is a major risk here just by reading their own literature and presenting it to you. Hey, here's an interesting quote. Chinese Communist Party demands Obama disarm American citizens. Of course, it wasn't just the Chinese. It was the Russians too, because they care so much for their people and our people. So why would the Chinese Party demand Obama disarm American citizens? Well, let me think. The president of China has come out and said that war with the United States is inevitable. The top general of the Chinese PLA came out and said that prepare for war against the United States. The chief admiral of the Chinese Navy, when speaking about all their new equipment to include submarines, missiles, and the new aircraft carriers, said this was for war against the United States to stop the encroachment of the American empire. Of course they want us disarmed. What was it that Emma Yoyomoto said? I never had any intentions nor plans to invade the United States because behind every blade of grass was a gun. And this is why Switzerland is allowed to have the type of military that we were supposed to have. We weren't supposed to have a standing military, my friends. We were supposed to have a true militia. And you want to know why? Because number one, it stops the threat of a standing military. Number two, it is the best historically proven defense in the world. And the reason why Switzerland's allowed to have it, the only country in the world, is because guess where the bankers keep 80% of their booty that they've taken from all the countries they've bled? That's right, Switzerland. 80% of their booty is kept in Switzerland. That's why they allow the Swiss people to have automatic weapons in their house. Do you remember the program we did? We read to you verbatim from the founding documents what the militia was. And what was the answer? The militia was every able-bodied man 16 to 60. Chinese Communist Party demands Obama disarm American citizens. How about request? Why are they demanding? You want to know why they're demanding, my friends? Because they can. Because of our fraudulent debt that they've purchased. Let us talk about Project 60. The details of Project 60 to support this analysis is in very unclear terms. One of the principal planks of Project 60 platform is known as the, listen to this, Edward Foreign Direct Investment. As laid out in the Project 60 website, and you can go to this, the portion of the plan will include Idaho's role in global business by providing foreign industry with a strong impetus for economic development. The impetus is a two-pronged attack on Ohio's domestic workforce. Okay, the immigration laws are contained in the Immigration Investment Program known as EB-5. The policy allows immigrants to become U.S. citizens for providing for and creating jobs in the United States. The idea would be to build a self-contained city with all services included, and we be modeled after the special economic zones that currently exist in China. If the Chinese have their way, we'll soon be seeing special economic zones pop up all over the United States, quoted the Idaho Statesman. The ramifications of this have not been fully expressed in regards to the sovereignty for a fully foreign-run city on U.S. soil. Let's stop. Fully foreign-run city on U.S. soil. What do they mean by that? Let me tell you what they mean by that. Because I have read this. And unfortunately, I am running out of time. I'm going to continue this on another show. Folks, when they say a fully foreign-run city on U.S. soil, first of all, the U.S. government has already approved 257 foreign trade zones here in the United States. You want to know why? Because they can't say no. The Chinese own so much of our debt, fraudulent fiat T-bills that the bankers have used to keep this charade going and shifted the burden to the American taxpayer, that now the Chinese are saying, we don't want your debt instrument. We want intrinsic assets. We want to set up in America. We want to have our own sovereign entities. And what do I mean by that? In Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Idaho, Alabama, Mississippi, and others, they are already setting up these foreign trade zones, and the Chinese are going to set up their own law enforcement, their own manufacturing, their own labor practices, their own manufacturing with regards to pollution and so forth. They're not going to have to pay attention to the environmentalist department at all, Department of Environmental Management. Okay? You do. They're not going to have to. They don't have to get driver's licenses. They don't have to pay road usage taxes. They got their own law enforcement. And they're going to ship in their own writing, all their own cheap labor to facilitate this. Because you remember back in page 1 what it said? Huh? What did it say? to facilitate labor or manufacturing, they are automatically going to be granted citizenship. And there's 257 of these that have been established, or I should say approved, by the United States government with regards to China. Water, I'm reading this verbatim, my friends. Water rights for the area, planned city control to access water in and out of the economic zone, utilities will be outside of any U.S. regulation and or control. And I'm reading that verbatim. Now, my friends, China is one of the biggest polluters in the entire world. They care not. Okay? The one that is being approved in Idaho right now is a 50 square mile self-sustaining city being developed south of Boise, Idaho. And when you read the remarks from the mayor of Boise, Idaho, he is just jubilant. Jubilant. They're calling this an economic zone. Just unbelievable. Okay, this is from the foreign press with an interview from Dr. Jerome Corsi. Under the plan, $1.7 trillion that the U.S. owes China. China will now going to take over U.S. infrastructure, U.S. high-valued land, U.S. businesses, be outside of any reach of any United States authoritarian or obligatory system. The one in Idaho right now, the Chinese are going to invest approximately $300 billion. Now you may say, my God, $300 billion. My friends, that's nothing, because just for one alone, they're looking at $1.7 trillion. Another one over here, $2.3 trillion. Okay? Today, the United States government pays China approximately $100 million a day in interest on the debt that we owe them. We're done. Call it a day. Stick the knife in the turkey. It's over. It's over. You're talking about this gentleman over here, Kyle, a senior Obama administration official on the financial cliff crisis team, talking about the only way out of this, and we're going to do it, is to crash the dollar, which we know is not a dollar. If you've been watching this program for these years, we have read to you verbatim what a dollar is. And what is a dollar, my friends? A dollar is 25.8 grains of gold and a 15-to-1 ratio of silver. You have neither. The bankers took that a long time ago. What you have is a Federal Reserve note. What is a note? An acknowledgement of debt. This is where we are. The Chinese no longer want your funny money, my friends. They want your land. They want to have authority to build these industrial centers outside of any authority, outside of any kind of leverage by the American people or your supposed elected officials. And they're going to sell it to you. Don't you fret about that. They're going to make it all warm and fuzzy, and the American people are going to say, oh, great, the Chinese are here to save us. Unbelievable. This Jerome Corsi, my friends, you can go to his website. He gets into this quite well. March 2011, the Chinese investors paid $2.5 million cash for a restaurant complex on the Maumee River, $3.8 million for 69 acres of newly decontaminated land. Chinese firm, I mean, you just go on. There's just pages and pages and pages. Toledo, Ohio, you know, they spent $63 million. It just goes on and goes on. The China National Machine Industrial Corporation, you know, in Ohio, has bought land in Ohio, bought land in Michigan, bought land in Pennsylvania. And these cities, these economic zones, if you would, my friends, are being set up at your expense. Do you think there's no manufacturing jobs in this country for the middle class now? What little is left, what do you think is going to happen when this goes into play? When they're bringing in their own slaves, because you know they're going to set these people up in rudimentary barracks. You know that they're going to be feeding them rudimentary food. They're not going to be paying any income taxes to supplement what you think is going to the government, but it's not. It's going to the IMF. And one of the biggest groups that's doing this, my friends, if you want to look this up, you ready for the name of the company in Michigan is Sino Michigan Properties, LLC. And they are located, I did some research on this, they are located in Milan, Michigan. And are you ready? When you go to their website, here's what it says. The stated goal, this is my note, stated goal to build a China city. My friends, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars. Sinomac, okay? There's another company, Sinomac, M-A-C-H, just bought land in Idaho. All right, unbelievable. The Chinese Overseas Shipping Company, you know who they are. You buy stuff from them every day. Costco. You've been financing your own demise. What's some other companies that have invested in this? The China National Offshore Oil Corporation, or CNOOC Group. Guess what they just did? They bought one of the biggest oil reserves down in Texas. They have complete ownership of it. Of course, the New York Times is selling us. This is great. According to the New York Times, happily so, investors from China are snapping up luxury apartments of millions of dollars on commercial and residential projects like the Atlantic Yards in Brooklyn. Now, if you don't know what the Atlantic Yards in Brooklyn are, my friends, that's supposed to be the new mecca of shipping in New York City. Guess who's paying for that infrastructure to be built? You got it. Your tax dollars. Congratulations. You're financing your demise once again. Sinopec, S-I-N-O-P-E-C, is fully owned by the Chinese government. Has just developed a company by the name of China Petrochemical Corporation. They are buying up about 75% of some of the decontaminated lands throughout the United States. You can look all this up, my friends. Chinese, $2.6 billion to buy AMC. It was recently announced by the Federal Reserve, this is just notes I made, that the Chinese banks will now be allowed to buy up American banks. Think of that. The banks that you just bailed out because they were too big to fall, have now, the Federal Reserve has given them permission to buy the American banks. Chinese firm just bought $1.8 billion, the aircraft maker Hawker Beechcraft. Folks, I could go on and go on and go on here. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time. There's just so many. There's so many, companies and lands. There's 44 major companies that are listed here right now that the Chinese are purchasing or putting bids to purchase. Steel corporations, defense contractors, scrap and trash, computer equipment, energy. The number one producer, China is now the number one producer of wind and solar power in the entire globe. Now here's something you would think we'd be able to beat the Chinese with. Believe it or not, today China produces nearly twice as much beer as the United States. Gee, if you think there's one thing we had down, it would be partying. And the Senate, a recent investigation by the U.S. Senate Committee on Armed Services found out that more than 1 million components of our military chain supply are produced in China. Scientific research facilities being bought up by China. Engineering companies, China. My friends, you got to understand what this is. When this Shanghai Agreement goes into play on May 1st, and we've talked about the Shanghai Agreement, they are no longer going to use the American dollar for the reserve currency, the Federal Reserve note. How that works is this, and I have to be real quick. And no matter what country you are in the world, whenever you want to buy and or purchase a barrel of oil, you had to take your local currency and change it into Federal Reserve notes. That's why the whole world was using Federal Reserve notes for their reserve currency. We've all heard about reserve currency. That's the reason why. Because if you wanted to buy or sell a barrel of oil, you had to change it into Federal Reserve notes. Shanghai Agreement goes into play on May 1st with Russia and China and India and Venezuela. And it was going to be Syria, it was going to be Libya, it was going to be Iraq and Iran. Of course, we're going into them countries. That's the real reason why we have. That what is going to happen to the dollar, or what you call the dollar? I think the writing's on the wall, my friends. My friends, I wish I had more time to get into what's in front of me here, and I'll probably continue this subject matter on another show. But I just want you to see what is in front of the American people. You have been listening to lies for decades, and now it's the end game. It is the end game. The game has come to checkmate. If you're a Go player, the game has come to Atare. As always, my friends, we are very, very thankful you take the time to watch our program. And please understand that there is a risk being in front and behind this camera, and that should be a barometer to you as to the times that we are in. And don't you dare have more than 3 days worth of food in your house, because you are a terrorist. We close in reminding you that you are responsible for your government. Thank you for watching.
Got to read between the lines.